Hey everyone, it's Brody at Everything Board Games. I was at Menara, so let's get it to the table. Menara is a cooperative strategic dexterity game, and in the game you are explorers and have discovered these ancient fragments that were once a large structure, and you are to reconstruct what you might think that the structure looked like. You'll be reconstructing the temple together, working as a team, and by placing columns and temple floors on top of each other to hopefully get high enough to satisfy what your conditions are. Let me show you how to set up the game. You'll first take the camp cardboard holder and randomly draw out 6 columns to place in it, and each player will also draw the indicated number of columns depending on the number of players and the difficulty that you want to play. So with 2 players on medium difficulty, we will draw out 6 columns each. There's this chart in the rulebook that makes it easy to know how many to take. When it's your turn, before doing anything else, you will always be able to trade any number of columns that you have with the camp. You'll place the cardboard floors in a stack, one on top of another, and this will form the quarry. You'll take the 3 top floors and place them so that each floor touches other floors at 2 points. And so essentially it's kind of making like a circle. You'll be able to use whatever side you want starting the game. Next, you'll place the level cards out so that you know how high you need to build the temple. And so 3 will be for easy mode, 4 for medium, and 5 for a difficult game. The ground floor doesn't count as one of these floors, so you will have to add that many more floors to the base floor. As I said, we will do medium difficulty. You will sort the construction plan cards and form 3 different piles. The blue cards are easy ones, yellows are medium, and red are the difficult ones. On your turn, after you exchange any columns with the camp that you would like, then you will draw one of these cards from one of the piles. You will need to perform the build action with whatever that card says. If the card shows a column or columns by themselves, then you will be adding that number of columns onto any floor tile. Columns are always added onto spots of their same color. If the card shows a column on top of an oval, then this means that you will need to place that number of columns on the same tile. Now a card like this means you will need to place as many columns on a single floor until you complete that tile. Whenever you add all the columns shown on a floor, you will immediately take a floor from the pile and add it to the temple, placing it on top of any of the columns. You will want to place these on at least 3 columns to make it stable. When placing a floor, you will need to know which side to use to add it to the temple. And so you will look at the construction card that you picked. If it has all light faces on it, then you will put the light side face up. If it shows a card that has 2 dark faces, then you'll use the dark side. But if the card has one of each, then you can choose which side that you want to place on. If you still had actions to take from your build card, then you will have to add that many more number of columns to finish your turn. This card means that you will need to move a temple floor with any of the columns that are on it, either up a level or down a level. And if the columns fall over when transporting the floor, then you did not fulfill that construction card. So whenever you can't or don't complete a construction card, then you will place it next to the level cards, adding to the difficulty of your final tower. So instead of 4 floors, now we need 5 floors. This will increase your goal of how high you need to build your temple by the end of the game. At this point, you can also reset the camp by drawing 6 new columns and placing the old ones back into the bag. Lastly, these cards mean you will need to move the indicated number of columns from any place on the temple to a higher level. When playing, it's important to know which type of cards are in which deck, because if you know you can't do the majority of the cards that are in this difficulty level, then you probably don't want to start out drawing those cards, because then you're just going to add to the difficulty by having to build a higher temple at the end of the game. Now during the game, if you ever can't or don't want to add a floor tile to the top of any of the columns, then you can extend your temple base. But by doing that, you will also need to add that card to the height, making it more difficult in the end, but it will broaden your base. After you build whatever is stated on the card, then you will draw columns back from the bag to your starting number, so back to 6. If the temple floors ever collapse, then the game ends immediately. The game will also end if any player cannot replenish their columns in their hand, or if all construction cards are used, or lastly, if the last temple floor is placed. After one of these things happens, then you will need to look to see if you win or not. You will look at the temple and see if it's high as the number of cards placed on the temple floors, then you will win. If some of the floors have collapsed but the temple still has enough levels required, that means you built wisely and stably and you win as well. If the temple does not have the number of required levels, then you lose the game. Now this game is really fun to play and is one of the best dexterity games and actually pretty strategic in itself. I love how the floors are all random shapes and you have to actually build a structure that isn't super flimsy. I love the feeling I get when playing this game because my brain is actually working pretty dang hard the entire game. And that usually doesn't happen to me with dexterity games. I like the idea of having this camp here. This always lets you trade your columns to plan or to help when you're stuck in a situation where you can only place one or two of your columns. So if you like dexterity games, then this is a must-have. Again, this is Menara, and if you like what you see, then go buy it.